Kia ora everybody and welcome to the Samsung iRacing NZ Cup Championship. My name is Matt Smite Ross and I'm joined by the illustrious EVP this week. Joining me here on the show, Evie, it's been a long time coming, but I'm glad to have you on the show.
Kia ora, Matt, and good evening. Thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm coming to you live from the sunny shores of washed-up Sim Racer Island. For those of you who haven't had a chance to meet me, I'm EVP. I last competed in Project Cars LPL Pro Season 3, so that was the Halcyon Days of 2019. It is a thrill to be back, and I'm just excited to get stuck in with it with you.
There you go, guys. You can clearly see he knows his stuff. But let's make sure you guys know your stuff by catching up on how this cup works. Of course, we've gone around the country. We've grabbed the best 24 races all around, and we're going to be racing them over 4 weeks. We're actually halfway through by now. And at the end of the day, we're going to be crowning our very first Samsung iRacing NZ Cup champion. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to be handing out championship points at the end of every race. Of course, the winner's going to take the most with 24 points, and then from then on, we'll take second place, 23 points, so on and so forth. Every week, we're going to be going around the world with 2 different tracks from each locale, a different locale every single week. And so halfway through now, Evie, you know, we've got to remember what these drivers are playing for as well, because there's a whole lot of cash up for grabs too. $1,500 in fact, so you know, there is quite a lot of money up for grabs. So we'll take a look at the prize pool. Here it is right now. Like I said, $1,500. First place is going to be taking home you know, a good chunk of that, $700, and then it goes all the way down to 6th place, which is where you're going to be in the money. So Evie, this is how things work. This is what they're playing for. Feels pretty good, man.
Yeah, bragging rights are fun and all, but it's funny how your steps always get a little bit lighter with 700 large in your hip pocket. A lot to play for, and as I was doing my homework today, it's pretty busy at the top of the table, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, that's an understatement for sure. If you guys have been catching up, you'll know how our leaderboard looks now that we're halfway through the cup. Dylan Jordan, Michael Healy, and Matt Stevens all tied for first place right now with 81 points each. We've got a few stragglers coming in just on their tails, Evie, but this is a great top of the table.
Yeah, it is a frightening sort of proposition for our top 3 runners. Jordan, Healy, and Stevens scarcely have a moment to breathe as they are in that 81-point tie apiece. Ewan Baker hot on their heels at 79. One I wanted to shout out going into this week is Mr. Brandon Dove in P11. His tournament so far has been a bit of a side wave, up and down, if you look at those points hauls. If he can keep it together and get it over the line, it's that old saying, to finish first you must finish. And if he can put it all together, he looks set to fly.
Another racer in a similar position as well is Antal Rafael Sabo, who's again had a bit of a curvy wave through his track results as well. 5-0, then 24-15. The man knows how to drive. He just needs to figure out how to do it without scoring so many penalties against himself. And so he's still got half the championship to do it, Evie, but he's still sitting in 14th. Do you reckon he can make it up there?
Yeah, it's a long road ahead for Antal Rafael Sabo. His story is one just sort of marked with sabotage. Like you say, a lot of drive-through penalties. If he can keep it on the quick stuff rather than, you know, parading through the pits, he should be able to turn his fortunes around. He's got the pace. He just kind of needs to maybe settle into his groove a little bit.
Yep, we've seen he can contend with the best, but let's see where he will contend with the best tonight, because we've got 2 new tracks coming at you, and they are some great classics. First up, we're going to be hitting up the Hockenheimring, 21 laps over on that one, and then second up, it's going to be Zandvoort, 21 laps again. So, Evie, look, what can viewers expect from both of these tracks?
Matt, good question. Our races today on this European leg, it's kind of how do we say this? A night of contrast. Hockenheimring, a fantastic driver favorite for overtaking opportunities. A lot of slow speed corners, heavy braking zones. These boys will be sitting on each other with reckless abandon. Zandvoort's kind of like the rap battle of racetracks. Not a lot of chances for overtaking, but it's a real test of flow. Look for those drivers to keep their momentum.
Yeah, two exciting tracks tonight, guys. So let's go ahead and head to our first qualifying track, as the racers are actually already out there on the fields getting their best times in. But Hockenheimring, you know, you've talked about the passing opportunities, that it's a bit of a fan favorite, but let's get into the nitty gritty. Like, where do you expect these overtakes to happen? Are we going to get any more drama? That's always going to be my question.
Yeah, so there are a lot of traps for young players on Hockenheimring. Turn 1, we get the fun out of the way early. Those boys will be looking to carry as much speed through that right-hander as they can. If they take a little bit too much to the inside, cars will punish you and send you out wide. And then out there, they want to kind of use all of the buffalo, roadly speaking, so they can accelerate through. They'll be playing a little bit with disaster, because off-tracks can kind of follow from that. Then sort of into the first hairpin, there's a very long straight. It kind of feels like you could measure the run down to that hairpin with a calendar. So it'll be perfect for us to watch people launch it on each other and try and make a name for themselves. It would be remiss of me as a washed-up sim racer to not point out that this is where I got my one and only LPL Pro podium.
Oh, yeah. You got to take what you can get.
Managed to defeat the great and powerful Monkey Matt. So, you know, that moment is forever burned up in my cerebral cortex.
Yeah. That's how you earned your spot here.
Exactly. You're going to get yourself in that FOMO any way you can. The other place I wanted to highlight was the stadium section. These cars being what they are, engine in the back, a lot of inertia as they try to carry their speed through that right-hand turn. Look for the drivers to try and like ease their two inside wheels onto that green stuff to help the car rotate. It's a real killer if they don't manage to carry that speed through. It's the corner just before Hayden Kirk, so as we rode on board with him. If they get it wrong, old mate in front of them, that's kind of where you end up, just saying hello to the fans.
All right. Well, I mean, look, plenty of fans to say hello to here tonight. And we're going to take a look at our first set of qualifying times that have come in. The races have already been on the track for about a few minutes now, so they've got their time starting to lock in. A lot of 139s. I was watching the practice sessions before, because the drivers all practice, you know, about an hour before the race actually goes on, and they were all getting like low 140s, but this is a lot more 139s than we had before when they were practicing, right? So you see all those names up there, and there are no surprises, Evie. You know, all top 6 contenders: Matt Stevens, Michael Healy, Ewan Baker, Dylan Jordan. But in that #1 spot is the man that you mentioned, Brandon Dove.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see someone like Dove coming in with a bit of a chip on his shoulder. That disqualification for failing to take a drive-through penalty will be burning in the back of his mind. As a driver, you never really want to feel like you had a race taken away from you. You always kind of want to like win or lose on merit. So it's a bit of an esports trope, but expect to see Brandon Dove's anime redemption arc if he has anything to say about it. Looking down the order, Ewan Baker, like, his season's been going gangbusters. Matt Smith, Monkey Matt as it were, he pointed him out as Mr. Monaco off to the world's esports champ, so he's probably got almost like a little bit to prove as someone who's standing on that world stage, as Brad Wybrow says, good day to the fans. Yeah, lot to take in here. Going down, keen to see some of these others. Also noting that until Rafael Sabo hasn't taken a lap yet. I think it was race 3 or 4 last week where he took a long time to set a qualifying time. So he's probably the first driver I've noticed who takes quite a cerebral wait-and-see approach to these quali sessions.
Yeah, definitely a big contrast to someone like Brandon Dove, who does quite often set his high time nice and early. Of course, you know, tire wear being a thing, that is something that will happen here, you know, unless, like Antal, you take a little while to drop that time there. But yeah, all things considered, this is looking pretty good for a lot of the drivers here. You know, everyone's kind of about where they expect to be. We're waiting to see where Antal Rafael Sabo does end up. I think that's the only real big question left. Other than that, you know, I'm seeing like Brad Jessen is another driver who I'd expect to be somewhere around about the middle of the pack, but he could contest some of those guys who maybe fall a little bit behind the top 10, behind even the top 7 or so, as there is usually a big group of about the top 6 that, you know, have their own little pack, they have their own little battles, but then there's a big gap after them.
Yeah, Brad Jessen is an interesting one to point out. Looking back over his finishing post, he's always been kind of P7 to P10 or thereabouts. Like you say, once you get into back from the top 4 or 5 runners, it's a real risk of you getting swallowed by that mid-pack. And one-make racing being what it is, like, you've kind of got to sort yourself out and get yourself some clear air to basically keep your race safe once you start door banging and sending it on each other. It's great for us and it gets us excited. We get to yell things like what a move, but if you're a racer, you're just kind of subjecting yourself to undue danger. If Jason can hook it up, find himself a clean lap and maybe get himself into that P654, it'll make a world of difference for setting what he would feel would be a more, let's say, representative race. Someone like Matt Anderson, in the first week he was a pole sitter, and since then he's only really been sort of P7 to P9. He would be like the prototypical get it done in quali. It's kind of like fighting. You never want to leave it to the judges, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You know, lock it in nice and early, get that advantage as soon as you possibly can. But here we are with Mr. Sabo, who is just about to finish his qualifying lap here to see if he is going to be contending up in that top run. But of course, dropping it in the pits, I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's going for one good one at the end.
Yeah, it looks like he's put in a cider, just kind of getting a feel for it. Be curious to see how he feels going around. 134 or 5-ish as he hit the pit entry. One of these days I'll learn to speak English. But yeah, he should be pretty dangerous if he can kind of find a bit more time on his for realsies I promise run.
Another driver who's yet to qualify as well is Ben Stewart. I'm always interested in watching his races. He's another one that contends like either just at the back of the top 6 or just at the front of the pack, chasing him somewhere around 7 or 8. So yeah, definitely keep an eye on that guy. Look to see what his qualifying time is going to be. Also, while we've been talking about all this, Hugo Allen slipped in to grab P2 on the grid, which is a name that we do see up there and can definitely be contending for those top slots on the championship. So for him to get a really good qualifying spot here, he could lock himself P1, P2 and walk home with, you know, maybe 24 points.
Yeah, Hugo Allen is a dangerous name to be sounding out. He had a very strong win race 2 on week 1. That's the race where Sabo dropped all the way to P18 following some argy-bargy, I believe. So Hugo Allen, a great benefactor of that. It's probably worth noting that, like, across all of these races after qualifying, the delta between P1 and P10 is like inside of 5/10. So these guys are waiting for mistakes. They're waiting for errors on track. When it comes to like pure pace, there is not a lot separating them. So all it takes is a little sliver of a window, and someone like Hugo Allen can come charging through.
Yeah, a really, really tight set of qualifiers actually, yeah, when you look at it, right? From 1st to 15th, it's even then only just barely over 1 second apart. So yeah, plenty of room to slip in there and improve your grid position, right? Like even if it's one spot, that can mean the difference. Like if you're ahead of the guy that causes a little bit of drama and, you know, some penalties to be handed out, then yeah, that could be a really good opportunity. So really every single grid position here will mean a lot.
Yeah, so gone are sort of the days from when I was competing where you had the first dozen sort of quick guys. I'd like to think of myself as the bookmark, and then there was kind of the rest of us trundling around the racetrack. It's really good to see these Liner Stern races really just kind of showing a high caliber of driving. It'll be interesting here at Hockenheim in particular. The presence of these slow speed corners will make later in the race tyre wear effect, particularly on the rears as these guys are scrambling for traction in these low speed corners.
Yep, so you're going to have to be watching out for that as the race does go on. Very, very hot here on Hockenheim Ring today. So taking a look at the remainder of the qualifiers coming on through, a few people pushed down. Carl Sampson actually slipping in there near the top, right? Well, near the top in P7, but has pushed Matt Stevens down. Ben Stewart dropping his qualifying lap, 140, 147. So not too bad, but it's still getting him out of that top 4, where Ben, I reckon Ben would be a real strong contender as if he can just get to that top 4. And in the grid, of course, is going to be the easiest place to do so. But for now, he's going to have to be fighting through quite a few drivers. And we know that a lot of them are quite aggressive on the overtaking. Some of them very good at defensive driving too.
If you forgive the force, I don't think someone like Matt Stevens, the Cream Insurance runner, is putting much of a premium on his qualifying pace. Looking back through his races, he's usually a pretty good bet to gain a few spots, either through the misfortune of others or just by his ability to keep it tidy, keep it on track. That's probably reflective of his 2K Cup, what we call full metal racing, I think Jimmy Broadbent called it. He's got that instinct for preserving the car, quite developed racecraft. So if I were making calls and putting my reputation on anything, I'd probably say that Matt Stevens is good for either finding some time on track before we're done qualifying, or just getting it done on track when it's race proper time.
All right, well, it looks like we're only going to get about one more lap in here, so keep your eye on that leaderboard, see if anyone does jump up in there. Currently on board with Michael Healy, who is, again, up in that top spot on the leadership board, the three-way tie. So, he could go ahead and improve that. In P7, he's going to have to fight pretty hard to get up there and start contesting. Oh, there it is. The latecomer, will jump off Michael Healy because Antal Rafael Sabo jumps right in there in P1 for his qualifying time.
He's got a name to make for himself here. He's unlucky in love, as we were saying in the build-up to this qualifying session. Look, his pace has never been an issue. He has been downright dangerous as we hit the halfway point of this tournament. The proof will be when it comes to the race. If he can survive for 21 laps, then maybe he can start counting his money. But until then, he's got to keep the front end out of another race's back end, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I think the best place to be able to do that will be in P1, where you're not being constantly fought. If you can get a good gap between him and, let's say, Hugo Allen, if that position remains, then I feel like Antal can have a pretty good time on the track today. He'll certainly have his mind on those penalties. They've stung him a little bit too hard too often, and so I'm sure he'll be focusing on that. 10 seconds to go, then we'll give the racers just a little bit of extra time to complete any laps they are currently on, to see if we're going to have anyone slide into that grid just a little bit further up. But it looks like not too many changes are coming in, at least up there in the top 6. It's kind of what you expected there. Hugo Allen being a bit of a surprise lately there, but I think Timothy Vaughan actually just qualified around 8th spot there, so that's quite nice for him. A driver that definitely needs some points to get into the prize money would be Timothy Vaughan.
Yeah, Timothy Vaughan, known as the Double Duck to his friends at home. He is no stranger to LPL competition. The last winner of the WRC Battle of Jacks Ridge competition at Armageddon, Auckland, if that might be somewhere you recognise the name from. He is rapido across many titles, and tracking him, even though he's just outside of the points, he has been Mr. Consistent. He'd be in that Hugo Allen class of driver where his racecraft and car positioning being what it is, all he needs is some of these quick guys to take each other out. A little bit of chaos at the front. Don't want to curse any of them, but yeah, he'll forever be waiting on the wings while our Double Duck. Ewan Baker, by the way, on a stunner of a lap. I've been watching him since we cut to him. That first, as he bails out, unlucky.
No, it was looking pretty good. Would have been good to see him. But look, he's in P3. He can't really be too upset with that result. So, he'll be looking pretty good once the grid comes to the race. And you look at the qualifying times, right? And they're all, like you said, very, very close together. I'd say the big gap between Antal and Hugo is, again, like something we have seen before, where there is just one racer that is just well ahead in terms of qualifying times.
Interesting thing to point out, anytime you've got a big gap like that on the ladder, pretty scary. 39.081 for Antal Rafael Sabo. That's got to be a confidence giver to the young man, and there's something that kind of scares me. It'd be the idea of him driving confident, because that would be quick, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what Antal can pull out today, so keep your eyes on that driver. Going down the list a little bit, Ben Stewart getting pushed all the way down to P11. That's going to be a bit of a tough battle for him to push forward a little bit further. Other than that, moving on down, we're not seeing too many surprising names down here in the list. Usually these kind of drivers have ended up around here, so again, everything kind of feeling pretty familiar here. It's really going to be about that top 6, and I think that's where all eyes are going to be, Evie.
Yeah, Ben Stewart's probably the one that stands out to me as probably being out of order as much as anything. But we were talking about, you know, the qualifiers versus strong races. He may yet find some good fortune and dive his way up through that order, so to speak. But no, I think your assessment's kind of nailed it on the head.
Yep, very, very good for, you know, watching Ben Stewart try and fight for a few more spots. But guys, we're going to be getting into the actual race in a few minutes. We're going to go to a quick break, and when we return, we're going to be hitting up Hockenheimring.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics. It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back. I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
back, everybody, to the Samsung iRacing New Zealand Cup Championship. I'm here at the Samsung Odyssey Arc Action Station, and we're here to talk a little bit about what happened during the qualifying times. Of course, we're on Hockenheim Ring, so drivers are very familiar with this track, but the driver that came in looking the most familiar was Antal Rafael Sabo. He came in about 300 milliseconds ahead of everyone else, including second place, which was Hugo Allen. A bit of a surprise to see him up there in the qualifying times. He'll be looking pretty good on the grid. Another surprise was Ben Stewart, all the way down around about P11. So he's a good battler, but he'll have to show it off here today so far down the grid. Otherwise, we're looking pretty standard stuff here. All the usual showing up there. You've got Brandon Dove. You've got Matt Stevens. They're all up there in the top 6 in the grid. And so they'll be really exciting to watch. We're guaranteed some really good battles on Hockenheim Ring here today. Evie, I mean, how excited are you for the grid here tonight?
I am 1.5 litre Coke No Sugar fizzing for this race here. 21 laps around Hockenheim Ring here at LetsPlay.Live. It is absolutely stunning. We've got 24 of our finest racers in the country looking to do battle and test their mettle for our entertainment. And really, is there any better way to spend a Thursday night looking at the monitors? Having a look now at the starting order from our beautiful blimp cam. And we have got Antal Rafael Sabo, the man of the hour, at first. Hugo Allen bringing up the rear, followed by Ewan Baker looking to make a name for himself after a maiden win last week. Brandon Duff in fourth, Dylan Jordan in fifth, then Stevens, Lobb, and Michael Healy. As we turn the page, we've got Timothy Vaughan, the double duck, P9. I think that's his best qualifying position all tournament. Carl Sampson and Ben Stewart looking to keep him honest. Mandela Pluck, Robert Henry, and Brad Wybrow not far off. The Valentine Kid is Brad Wybrow with a 140.112. Then we've got Hamish Cleland and Henry Thomas Kircher looking to kind of have better days recently, let's say. Brad Jessen and Hayden Kirk in P17 and 18. Then we've got Grond, Scott, Jabor, and then that will make the rest of the field.
It's a good grid, Evie. I'm excited to see how it goes out. Of course, you know, I go on about this guy all the time, but Antal Rafael Sabo, you know, being in P1 is just, it feels like this is the one for him, you know? If there's ever going to be the race where he just smashes it out of the park, forgets about penalties, it's going to be this one. So, drivers now popping into existence here into the grid. We're just about ready to go, ladies and gentlemen. And as soon as we are, I'm expecting some big things here. Evie, is it going to be turn 1 where we get the exciting times?
Yeah, it's going to be probably chaos here. 24 doesn't really go into 1 on any track, and turn 1 is like quite a medium speedy right-hander. A lot of potential for sort of your first off-track violations or maybe your incident points as you try to squeeze and navigate your way through. And the sort of design of the track is quite potholish on the inside. So if you hit that the wrong way and let your car bounce, you can kind of get yourself carried off into Narnia. So hopefully the boys well practiced, kind of tiptoe through the tulips, as it were. But it'll be exciting to see nonetheless.
All right, and they're off on Hockenheim Ring. Let's go in the green. Antal Rafael Sabo in the pole position here and zooming off ahead as we expect him to. But it's going to be turn 1 where all the excitement will begin. Who's going to be battling who? Will we see anyone challenge to go on the inside track? Try and get a few positions, squeeze them in. It's all starting here.
Yeah, pretty busy days in turn 1. You can see, as we were calling out at the top of the broadcast, as you get further through that midfield, you've got people running 2 or 3 wide, all the stuff that the racers love, but and same with the people at home. But good shout out there to Antal Rafael Sabo for getting away cleanly and leading them into the first instance of this hairpin. Runners there getting a little bit of contact, heard some crunch and bodywork in towards the middle of the pack. But yeah, just love to see it at Hockenheim. It's great to be in Germany.
Oh yeah, you can definitely see, especially in the back of the pack, a little bit of contact there. We'll see how that goes out for a few of the drivers, but as it stands, that top position in the grid really paying off right now. 1.5 second split time. Antal is zooming away and keeping that gap nice and wide, but however, you look at Hugo Allen, he is closing that gap extremely quickly. Must have a really solid grasp on some sort of slipstream here, but driving away, it's looking like we're getting into that single file here. Evie, who are you looking at for the next overtake?
I'd be curious to see how Hugo Allen kind of capitalized on that gain. You saw him close up from sort of 1.3 seconds all the way up to just like half a second. He must have just carried a blinding amount of speed through that last turn. Word on the street is that the tow is sort of starts being effective from around a second-ish, and it gets more powerful as you close in. Dirty air, not really like something you'd have to worry a huge amount with these cars. So probably in the next couple of laps, let's just see if he can keep pressuring Sabo. Sabo's not really known to crack under pressure. He's like the trouble that I've seen him get into is sort of when he's looking to make moves, because he's a feisty sort of a guy. So I'll be curious to see how he can control a race.
Yeah, and he also gets a lot of strength from squeezing in a few little extra microseconds in where he can get them. And sometimes he squeezes a little bit too far and does get hit for it. But of course, that's not all he's good at. We've got a safety car coming out though, and that is going to, I believe, just slow everyone down a little bit. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah, so the safety car is usually an issue on track. Someone's had a big knock or something like that. I will sheepishly confess that I didn't see what happened, but yeah, they'll just have to slow down the tracks and keep each other behaving themselves. Once they're ready to go, the safety car will pull into the pits, and it'll be on Sabo to get everything started again. I have to confess, not really sure how it's done here, but usually there'll be like a green light signal on the track, and they'll go flying down to the start-finish line.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not expecting it anytime soon, with a few people doing the zoomies along the track and waving back and forth. And, you know, this is also a thing for your equipment, right, Evie? Because, you know, you're keeping your tires nice and, you know, crisp, not heating up too much, and going back and forth. I believe that's a technique you use to lower that a little bit.
Yep, so in my illustrious hobby racing career, I've only had to park up behind the safety car once. Hilariously, during our driver's briefing, they named a supercar driver, Craig Lowndes, and he told us to knock off the weaving. All we'll do is spin out. Only really applies to the open wheelers and the Formula boys. For these guys who have to maintain their tyre temperatures, they probably just have to go hard onto the brakes as they commit to a corner, and then put the foot down and accelerate. Because they haven't really given too much of an indication on when the safety car is coming in, it doesn't seem to be that they're too worried about doing it now, but you'll probably see those behaviors start to come back up as the safety car comes in, basically. Looking at the ladder now, our friends Ian Jambor and maybe some others may have come together, because there are a couple of flashes out on the ladder. So yeah, just really curious to know what caused the safety car.
Yeah, we can talk a little bit about the changes from what we saw on the grid as well. I think Ben Stewart took 2 spots. Timothy Vaughan would have gone up, I believe, 2 or 3 as well. So they've done fairly well for themselves out of the grid. Whereas everyone else, I believe that is pretty much the grid order. I think Matt Stevens as well popped up a few, but he may have actually been in 5th in the grid as well. I'm not actually quite sure, but for now, yeah, I mean, we didn't get too much going on, Evie. We only got 1 lap, but it turns out it was the big crash back at turn 1 which caused the safety car to come out. I believe I saw that as well. It was well at the back of the pack as well. Must have been quite a crash to bring out the safety car though.
Yeah, Hayden Kirk, the great captain, has been beamed all the way back to the pits. He must have come together with Ian into T1. Like we said, it was a lot of room for feistiness, and that is a tough way for the back markers to end their race. Just hearing through that, we'll be looking to get the action underway post-haste. So it'll be pretty exciting. For the likes of Hugo Allen, doesn't really affect him too much. He gets to chill at low speed, not wearing his tyres behind Sabo. But the likes of Ewan, Brandon, and Mr. Stevens, this great neutralizing gives them a chance to maybe jump on the restart. So I'll be curious to see how our dirty half dozen at the front get to work as we restart this race.
Yeah, and so like a little bit of an equalizer here. So let's get things restarted fairly soon, with that safety car getting out of the way any moment now. And so, of course, you got to remember, you know, Antal had a pretty solid lead ahead of everyone until that safety car happened. And now he's going to have people right up his tail. And not just the person in P2, not just Hugo Allen, but everyone will be battling the person in front of them, causing all kinds of shenanigans as they try to get those extra championship points by jumping up a pace. But seeing as this has lasted almost a whole lap here, Evie, I think even more than one, you know, we're only 14 laps here.
Yeah, I think we had a good couple of laps under the safety car. You can see all the guys getting ready to get away. The safety car will be leaving shortly, and I just love it when they're getting their tires ready. They're like caged animals ready to jump out and get going. It'll be just, yeah, to be on those front runners to try and catch Sabo as they restart. I'm sure he was hoping for, let's say, a classic LPL iRacing excursion where he was lonely out at the front and the others sort of fight amongst themselves. This safety car has just kind of brought the action to him, so it'll be on him to see if he can get himself back in that mental space and go racing again. As you can see, he's tipping it in to get to the start-finish line and go racing.
Yeah, this should be where things get back into the action here. I believe safety car is getting out of the way, so now we can continue things as we were. Can Sabo hold his lead there at pole position? He's done so before. Let's see how he handles against Hugo Allen, Ewan Baker at his back, and of course his rival from week 2, Brandon Dove, sitting there in 4th position. So a lot of those guys definitely up there to battle, and we're about to see it.
Yeah, a little bit of desperation for Sabo into turn 1 on the restart. He used all of the Buffalo on the turn exit and then some. He might be wearing an off track for that. Bit painful this early on in the race, but he should be managing that and be fine. If you're Hugo Allen, you're probably rubbing your hands together because you know that pressure is working. He's sitting there on 2/10 back and just threatening. Car number 99 there, Darren Lobb, had a good little look on the inside of Matt Stevens. He's sitting pretty in P5. We pointed him out as the strong wheel-to-wheeler, and he seems to be making us look smarter than perhaps I am as he's worked his way up the field.
Yeah, and also noting that he was trying to get by Dylan Jordan, who was now on his tail. Dylan Jordan, one of the 3 drivers in that 3-way tie for first place in the championship at the moment. So he'll be wanting to, again, eke out every single racing point that he can get at the end of these races, because remember, each position you get 1 extra point, and we've seen it's a 3-way tie. And even if you drop 2 points, then you've got Ewan Baker right on your tail in the championship. So definitely expect to see these battles here between these guys. They're not going to be happy to settle for, oh, you know, this position's going to be good enough. You know, I can make do with this many points. No, it's going to be all about pushing every single point, especially for those guys up in P1.
Riding on board with Darren Lobb, you get a really fascinating look at what it must be like to run in the pack with this field. It's got to be pretty heartening to know that like everybody here is capable of running within a couple tenths of each other, because when you hit these braking points, you can kind of rest assured that no one's going to be like running up the back of you and mindlessly missing a braking point. And at least you just kind of settle in, find your rhythm, and start to set up the car ahead for an overtake. Big, long run down here through Parabolica, heading into the hairpin. You can see him having a little bit of a look inside, threatening car 40 a little bit, seeing what it's doing, but he's just going to chill, hit his braking point, and just let him know he's there. Good little work there to open up the corner, get on the gas early, start that run down. Liking a lot of what I'm seeing from Lobb.
Yeah, Michael Healy going to be his next challenger. And again, another racer in that top 3 position, all tied in first place. So he'll be quite a challenge to get by, especially because I imagine he doesn't want to lose any of those points to drop out of that 3-way tie, because just ahead of him as well, 2 positions ahead in 5th place, Matt Stevens, the 3rd driver in the 3-way tie. So these guys will be defending, especially Matt Stevens will be wanting to hold the door tightly shut out of those 2 drivers behind him as well. So it's going to be very hard to get past him. We've seen Stevens battle off other drivers trying to overtake him before and done very well. So yeah, eyes going to be on Matt Stevens for sure. So drivers like Darren Lobb, Ben Stewart, who have a few positions to climb in the championship leaderboard, may look to try and go on the attack. Let's see how well he gets held off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're someone like Antal Rafael Sabo, you kind of hope that the likes of Healy, those leaderboard people that are tied up, stay tied up in the midfield, because that's got to give you a window back into this fight. Basically, the same sort of goes as you walk through the order. Interesting that you mentioned Matt Stevens as a really strong defensive driver. Curious to know if that's like something that he feels his real-world experience gives him, let's say, the edge in, like, because that all comes down to sort of car placement, In the same way you might like manage a map in a shooter or another esports title, where you place your car can have a big influence on where people try to attack you from. So Matt Stevens clearly established himself as a person with like little weaknesses when it comes to getting overtaken.
Yeah, one of the best things about sim racing is that mix of experience, right? You got the guys who play purely on the game, the guys who play almost purely. We've had purely on the track drivers just join these sim races and actually top out the competition before. So you also get a little bit of both sides, right? And then there's people in the middle who, you know, they play the game, they get a little bit of real world experience. Maybe they throw on a VR headset as well. We definitely have a few drivers doing that as well. And, you know, I asked Monkey Matt, like, what his preferred style is. You jump on the VR a little bit too, don't you, Evie?
Yep, so I competed in Project Cars 2 with a VR headset, my Vive at the time. Also worth noting that Timothy Vaughan is racing in VR tonight, along with Ewan Baker in third position. I asked Dubtrue a similar thing, why is it that you're in VR? And it's mostly because he's accustomed to it. He was pretty frank, he reckons it's just the immersion that helps. He doesn't necessarily think it makes him any quicker. But there's something to be said for like comfort and familiarity. Something I appreciated is the stereoscopic 3D vision. Made it quite handy for judging braking distances, distances to car ahead, because you've got your depth perception. Dubtrue pointed out that a lot of the top esports guys are used to triple screen monitors, and Matt's probably got his finger on the pulse there, where these guys are relying on really consistent braking reference points and markers, and they're just letting their peripheral vision do that work for them. So like everything, it's different strokes for different folks. I'm too slow for it to make a difference, so for VR it just was more fun.
Yeah, I think, honestly, I think that's how a lot of people would decide to, is at the end of the day, you know, people are entering these because they love the game, they love the sport, and at the end of the day, it's just fun for them as well. So, you know, a lot of competition, a lot of drive, but also love of the sport. So, yeah, I think VR, you know, for a lot of guys, it's just got to be the immersion, right? I mean, I think I would be the same as well, you know, if I could afford a VR setup, but, you know, like, it's quite an investment. So loving the mix coming into this one as we hit lap number 8 here for the drivers. And honestly, we've been single file for quite some time. A lot of these battles just haven't really amounted to much. No one can really get past any openings. Darren Lobb, he's been sitting here in 8th place for quite some time, not able to get past Michael Healy.
Yeah, I'd say the issue that we're facing here is one of parity. It's really nice that everybody here is within a few tenths of each other in qualifying speed, but that translates to not a lot of delta in terms of pace when it comes to trying to overtake. These guys probably want to be like butting up on like a second quicker than these guys to be able to sort of affect anything on track. So what these guys will be looking to do is just kind of sitting in there, managing their pace, trying to bide their time and see if they can't force a mistake or an error. Not as visually pleasing for you and I, trying to call the action, but there'll be a lot of management, a lot of biding their time and sizing up of their opponents as they burn through the laps here. As we butt up against the halfway point of this race at Hockenheim Ring, I'd point to some of these runners and probably like try and see how their rear tires are doing. It's very lovely that Antal Rafael Sabo has stretched out a 2-second lead, but that kind of pace has got to be torturous for his rear tires.
Yeah, that is someone I was going to mention. Like, how do you get that big of a gap while everyone else is having trouble with it? So, Antal, he's got that clean air that you were talking about, but you know, you're mentioning maybe at the cost of his tires, a little bit rough. And also, you got to wonder, you know, is he pushing the track limits again? Who knows? You know, he doesn't actually have Hugo Allen on his tail anymore, so may not even need to.
Yeah, I mean, if we were Sabo's race engineers, we'd probably be begging him to manage his pace a little bit and chill out. Once you've built out that 2-second lead and you know that the next 3 behind you are kind of fighting tooth and nail, I would dare suggest that you've got a bit of room to breathe, especially if you're starting to push up things like those off-track infractions and things like that. Someone like Hugo Allen, he's sort of besieged all sides. We know Ewan Baker's got pace here. He has a look on the inside, goes very deep into the hairpin, and that is all she wrote for that. Pretty sweet that the door is now opened for Brandon Dove to put himself back into the story. The anime redemption arc may be on yet.
Are we going to get the rivalry, though? Is Brandon Dove going to face his arch enemy, Antal Rafael Sabo, if you can catch up to him? 3 seconds behind, and that gap only seems to be widening as the battles continue in the second, third, and fourth place little pack we've got going on. I believe Matt Stevens actually joining the party now too, so make that a four-car pack, sorry, all the way down to fifth place. So Matt Stevens definitely wants to be overtaking, you know, as much as he can. Get that gap between him and Michael Healy and the other first place driver as well, Dylan Jordan. Kick them out, you know, make a big gap between them so you're no longer in this three-way tie in championship points. And the best way to do that is going to be beating all of these drivers in front of you right now. Of course, after tonight, at least within those three drivers, they can't be tied anymore. They're all going to get different amounts of points.
Yeah, this story is going to come to a conclusion by hook or by crook. Matt Stevens making all of us proud by just, you know, showing the benefits of keeping it tidy and just keeping your nose in there for when a situation developed. Hugo Allen just kind of typified one-make racing. Once he got offline, lost a little bit of momentum. Baker and Dove were there to sort of reap the benefits. So yeah, like as we cruise through lap 10 here, this race is far from over.
Far from over, but of course the big battle's got to be in that second, third, fourth, and fifth. We've got to see where they're going to be challenging each other next, right? Because there are a lot of single file moments here. The drivers don't really have too many opportunities to attack each other, but it's really once we get those 3-4 wide lanes, those turns, where they might be trying to do so. Of course, this man right here, Antal Rafael Sabo, just the gap widens again and again. And like you said, he should have a little bit of room to ease off on the tires if he needs to, but we're over halfway here. Do you reckon that's going to change?
I mean, if he keeps pushing like this, I mean, Homeboy looks like he's ready to put in 11 qualifying laps before the night is done. He was humming through that last corner and taking a little bit of dirt with him and across the track, building up 3 and a bit seconds of a lead as he, you know, just kind of puts on a clinic for us on screen. I wonder if he's got like the nightmare remembrance of Monza in his in his memory, where you know, Brandon Dove took it to the last lap, last corner through. I believe that corner is also called Parabolica, and it was a loss of traction that gave him the win. These guys have been back and forth all tournament, so yeah, he probably just doesn't want to leave it a chance.
Well, he should not have to, right? Like, look at how far ahead he is, doing extremely well. Jumping back to Brandon Dove, though, he's actually widened his gap just a slight amount, you know, half a second there. Might be enough to hold off anyone hanging out behind him. You know, you've got Ewan Baker, definitely a driver you do not want to be trying to defend against, especially when you're trying to catch up to Antal. But with 10 laps to go, you're going to have to be really shaving off some of that split time there to challenge him if you want to close a 3-second gap. Brandon Dove, he may just be praying that Antal just pushes it too hard.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see if Brandon has any more pace to go. Curious to see what the state of his tyres are. If he can reel in Sabo over the rest of the race, that'll be an interesting thing to see. Well, he's also kind of chucking it through there as they enter the stadium section. Ewan Baker, we know he's got the pace to hang with Brandon Dove. And at the risk of speaking ill of Hugo Allen, he seems to be serving as a bit of a cork in the bottle for Stevens behind. I would dare say that if things kind of track as they are, Dove and Baker probably safe as they are, as what I think will happen is Stevens and Allen will fight and just kind of bring those behind closer to them rather than close in on runners in 2 and 3. So if Baker can keep his head on, tuck in behind Dove, let him reel in Sabo. Doesn't seem to be that much on as they've dropped probably another half a second as I've started this little ramble. Things are looking pretty safe, barring a large mistake from our leader.
I can definitely see a driver like Matt Stevens trying to challenge Hugo Allen, though. You know, he could be safe, knows that he's ahead of the 2 other front runners. So technically, if things finish like they do now, then he will still be ahead in the championship points. However, we've seen that, again, you need those every single little point. to guarantee that, because who knows what's going to happen in race number 2 when we go to Zandvoort. So, yeah, Matt Stevens against Hugo Allen, like you said, you know, not often up here in the top pack. How well can he contend? For now, it seems to be really well, right? He's holding out Matt Stevens, but the question is, how much is Matt Stevens even looking to challenge in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, ducking back to Hugo Allen, I think he's trying to get me to put some respect on his name. Hugo looking a bit of a boss there, closing right up on Baker here as we see him line astern with Mr. Dove. All things being equal, I think these guys are pretty happy to just sort of manage their pace and see what happens. It's very much a test of mettle for our drivers on track right now. You can see the cars are getting on a bit in the laps. Speaking with one of the drivers on track, the sheer prevalence of low-speed corners on this track was just start to make tyre wear a factor. So it'll be a situation where like all appears normal until it's suddenly not, because someone will see an opening, someone will think a move is on, step on the loud pedal to capitalize and find that the traction's not there, and that's when things will get fun.
And we will be waiting for that moment with bated breath, because 13 laps completed, getting into the second, well, perhaps the last third of the track very, very shortly. And as you said, you know, everyone's been locked in position here. We're really waiting for that one moment where someone sees that opening, that sign of weakness on the driver in front of them. The real ones to watch have got to be Ewan Baker challenging Brandon Dove and Matt Stevens challenging Hugo Allen. That's got to be where it's going to be. Another one, though, would be, you know, what's Darren Lobb going to be doing? Is he going to be contesting Michael Healy? He's fallen a little further behind, but he's going to have Dylan Jordan straight on his tail as well. I think that's going to be another really cool battle to watch, especially, like you said, as that tyre wear goes on.
Yeah, I mean, he seems pretty happy to sit on the rear bumper of Michael Healy, is our man Darren Lobb. He's had a couple of laps now to just kind of sit and assess. As these guys follow each other around Hockenheim Ring, they're getting a feel for where they're quicker, where they're slower, and just kind of planning where they may want to make their move from there. Some of these drivers will be like, they'll feel they're stronger under the brakes and can make a move in the hairpin, whereas some of them may want to carry a bit more momentum and maybe hang it around the outside on a high-speed corner. Be curious to see what they try there as we have a look at Stevens kind of deciding discretion's the better part of valor on Ewan Baker.
Yeah, I mean, right, like you want to not really go too hard on him. You don't want to challenge it too much right now, because like I said, you know, as much as he does want every extra little point, he's also quite content with his position. It's really Michael Healy and Dylan Jordan who want to be challenging. They want to get at least up to Matt Stevens to make sure he doesn't shoot ahead of them in the championship points for that $700 in first place at the end of the 4 weeks, because we're already past the halfway marker, Evie. We've already finished 4 of the tracks, this one being our 5th here, so this will be a good little way to shoot ahead and get that almost get your own gap here in the championship cup leaderboard, in the same way that Antal's got a massive lead on Brandon Dove and making it safe as well.
Yeah, looking at this phase of the race, there's been a lot of biding of time. It's a stark contrast from, let's say, the rounds at Daytona or even Monza, where there was a lot of there's a lot more willingness to engage. I dare wonder to, you know, speculate to see if these drivers are kind of getting used to each other, how they perform on track as these guys go through the races and spend more time in LPL. Like, they may be used to each other from iRacing lobbies and run into each other in different splits, but in these sorts of leagues, like it's almost being like office mates. So like, I for one would be a little bit nervous about battling 1 or 2 drivers on the grid, because you know that they will fight tooth and nail for everything. Whereas at this point of the tournament as well, people will have an understanding of where they are relative to each other on the leading board and knowing whether or not they need to fight something.
Yep, competitive players at heart, for sure. Again, though, you know, we're 2 laps deeper as well, and things are still yet to change. You know, everyone's close enough to go for these battles, but no one really wants to take it yet, Evie. No one really wants to be the one to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I mean, picking up from your thought here, I mean, that willingness to sort of consolidate and manage the race at this point is not surprising. Oh my God, Hugo Allen is very close to the wall there, entering the stadium section. Like at this point, like the 1 extra point from gaining a position may not be worth the punishment of getting it wrong, bottling it, and tumbling down the order. No one really wants a storyline like Brandon Dove. Like the peaks in his season so far may not be worth the troughs. But Hugo Allen might be one to watch here because he was looking very racing feisty with Ewan Baker over the last 30 seconds, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, look, he wasn't punished for it too much at the very least for now, but he was really looking for something there where I was surprised to think that he would find anything at all. So definitely trying to maybe start looking at pulling the trigger. Notice there's only 5 laps left. A 4th place finish would be fantastic for Hugo Allen. It would shoot him up with a huge amount of points, a good injection that he will certainly need to be up there. But again, like as someone who's maybe not looking at really contesting the top 6 here, just wants to play it a little bit more hard, right? Like see if he can take, you know, a few positions off these guys who will be winning the champ, or you know, at least one of these guys probably will be winning the championship later on, looking at the points. So you could be looking to challenge just to say, hey, I beat the guy that won.
Yeah, I mean, like, you take everything you're given in this league. I mean, all it really takes is an instance like last week where a little bit shovey, a little bit of contact. Next thing you know, you're from like 1st to 18th, and that's your front runners getting well compromised. I mean, there's a good reason we don't determine the winner based on qualifying alone. They've got to sort it out on track. So definitely can't take anything from the likes of Hugo Allen for a very strong performance, and it's got to be vindicating for that sort of driver to be able to kind of put it all together on track.
All right, and yeah, now you can see on your left-hand side of the screen the split times, all now compared to Antal Rafael Sabo, who is just smashing it here on Hockenheim, and you know, really getting the, I don't want to say victory lap just yet because you know, we'll decide that, but it sure feels like one, as he's really getting the drive that he really has been working at for such a long time. Even though races where he did get those really good championship points, it was always in a battle with his rival Brandon Dove, at least here in the Championship Cup. So now that he's got the free air, the clean air to not have any of those battles, the stress almost gone, he's looking fantastic.
Yeah, he's really typifying a driver that is unleashed. I dare say he must have spent some time in practice from last week, doing what he has to and what he can to avoid a repeat from last week. Oh, there's a big bit of contact there, and Brandon Dove is just sent into the shadow realm. That is very unfortunate. It looks like someone just got a little bit untidy on the brakes. That is heartbreak, and looks like we're in a trough of the Brandon Dove sine wave.
Yeah,
that is not good at all.
That could even essentially kill Brandon Dove's chance at the top 6 finish to get into the prize money. We'll obviously have to see a little bit later and do a little bit of quick maths when we see the leaderboard, but you know, he could, not a driver that could afford it, especially if he was gunning for those top spots. Really devastating to see. We'll get the details on that crash a little bit later because, yeah, it definitely felt like the contact was a big part of that. So we'll see what that is going to be a little bit later. But for everyone else, they have to be feeling pretty good about it, right? Not too affected by it. One less driver who is quite scary in the middle of it all. Darren Lobb loving it, right? He was right behind Brandon Dove just before. Now challenging Michael Healy, who again is going to be a hard driver to overtake, but Darren Lobb, you know, he'd be happy with a top 6 finish.
Anyone in that front-running order are breathing a sigh of relief. They have managed to dispatch 2 very dangerous drivers in Ewan Baker, Mr. Monaco himself, and Brandon Dove. I don't know if that was like a lapse of concentration or braking in a slightly weird spot on Dove's behalf, but yeah, just committing to that quick right-hander, ran into the back of it, and Brandon Dove just does your best improve, does a loop-to-loop and collects a lot of damage. Hits the wall. That's no, it's heartbreak. If you are Brandon Dove, like going back to an earlier point, you never want the race taken out of your hands like that. And I mean, at this point, he's just racing for pride, isn't he? But yeah, Sabo loses a sparring partner, loses a natural rival, and we've got to scramble to write a new script, basically.
Well, I mean, hey, hold that thought, because Antal may still end up being right next to Brandon Dove on the leaderboard. Sabo was quite a few positions behind, so with this deficit, he may shoot ahead, but they would definitely be in challenging each other. Of course, yeah, it's going to be great that he doesn't have to worry about his points nearly as much, should be able to overtake him, and then again, that's going to leave an extra spot there in that top 6. But, you know, if things continue as they do, right, Hugo Allen, Darren Lobb showing up in the top 6 could push a few other front runners a little further down. Antal, of course, not technically even in the top 6 in the championship at the moment, so he's going to be pushing a few of them down. This leaderboard could look really spicy after Hockenheim. We've only got 3 laps to go. I don't know if we're going to get anything as exciting as that, but anything can still happen. But I feel like we're looking at a locked-in finish.
Yeah, I mean, if you were measuring the field in terms of pure pace, you would have probably earmarked Sabo, Dove, and week 1 Matt Anderson as your front runners. Someone like Sabo would probably be taking, like, this must be vindication for him. Like, it'd be a feeling of finally looking to race sort of 2. Someone like Hugo. Well, Allen has a race win from race 2, so he's looking pretty good. But sort of the likes of Baker and Stewart, maybe they were gifted their wins in top-seeded spots, like from incidents on track. But I mean, there is a very good reason we don't hand out the points at qualifying.
Yeah, we want that excitement. We want that drama. And we've been getting it. You know, it's a little quiet here on Hockenheim Ring. We had one little event, and that's all right, but that kind of shows how exciting the championship has been so far. You know, week 1 was insane. We had so many penalties, so many crashes handed out galore, but here, you know, I think maybe the drivers are a little more accustomed to each other right now, and not wanting to push these penalties even further. And I believe there was talk as well about lowering the harshness of the penalty system in iRacing, just for the rest of the competition. I'm not sure if that actually did go through, but I did hear there was talk about it. So maybe not this week, but could even come into next week, or it could not happen at all. But for now, it feels like, you know, the drivers have been feeling, at least some of the front runners, they've been feeling the burn on the penalty system.
When you say the penalty system, do you mean sort of the issuing of off-tracks or incidents? Those being 2 distinct things.
The off-tracks, which was,
okay.
You know, it was pushing it.
Yeah, okay. Be curious to see if there's any change. It looks like these runners have been pretty well behaved on track. Had a little bit of a scout ahead today. There's like a couple of spicy places, turn 1 being what it is. Ooh, big 3-way over here as Luck gets sort of ducked under by Kana before. No, Pluck makes a move on Kircher. Can't read numbers, but yeah, pointed out that the hairpin would be a spicy place for overtakes, and so good as this battle continues side by side into the left hand. And my goodness, these boys are racy.
Yeah, all synchronized as well on those turns. They're all trying to get the inside, the outer, even the inner track there to try and pull ahead at the moment. So we are getting at least a little bit of a battle, but we've got the final lap here all completed. Antal locked that one in, and Hugo Allen now dropping his one in as well. So feeling fantastic for that top 6 there. Will we see any changes here around the 10, 11, 12 spot? I think these guys have also somewhat locked their positions in here coming into the final turn, and they'll be rushing up the straight just to get those positions all finalized and done and dusted. So, Evie, it looks like we're going to be looking at our grid here, our final positions.
Yeah, taking the checkered flag, it is full credit to Antal Rafael Sabo coming in at P1. Hugo Allen, a there's no other word for it, gargantuan 8 seconds back. That is just a masterclass from Sabo, where we thought that maybe they'd be quite hard on his tyres, and I've been proven wrong and an idiot. Matt Stevens does very well to take the final step on the podium. Congratulations to you, sir. And we've got Benjamin A. Stewart in 4th, Healy in 5th, Lob in 6th, and Jordan in 7th. Timothy Vaughan at the double duck. That's got to be among his strongest finish for the season. That's P8 for him. And we've got Samson in P9. Kircher breaks his way into the 10th spot, top 10, I believe, for the first time in this tournament. So that's got to be a really good feeling for him. And then we've got, where am I? Ewan Baker outside of his customary top spots. Mandela Pluck, Jessen, Cleland, and Dove in last after having to box the damage.
Yeah, a little bit disappointing for some of the drivers hit by the contact on the field, but of course, really fantastic for a lot of them here. So we'll go off of, well, the very best of the start. Antel, of course, really looking great with that P1 grid spot. Hugo Allen, excellent finish there for himself. May even put himself up in the top 12 leaderboard. Matt Stevens, I think, is the real winner here as well, you know, securing that spot in first position of the championship. We'll get a look at that in a second. Moving down the field, though, Ewan Baker pushed back, did recover fairly well in P11, but still not going to be happy with that finish, along with Brandon Dove as well. 15th position after doing so well early on.
Yeah, if it was Ewan Baker, I believe, who made that contact with Brandon Dove, like I suspect he would have been carrying damage following that incident, so it would have been hard for him to sort of make headway up the field. Likewise with Dove, once you've got a box and you're only one to pit, you've got all that pit transit time to basically climb that mountain, and that's a hard ask for anybody. But no, Antel Rafael Sabo, just huge work. Congratulations.
Well, that is Hockenheimring. It wasn't as exciting and dramatic as some of our previous races, but still got our leaderboard back on track, Evie. However, after the break, we're going to be going to Zandvoort, and that's going to be another chance of redemption for a lot of these drivers to get back on the Cup leaderboard. Come back after the break, because we've still got more iRacing action.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse. Our world.
My world is astrophysics. It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
Kia ora everybody and welcome back to the Samsung iRacing NZ Cup Championship. I'm Smite and this guy is still Evie and he's still having a great time being on the show with me. Hockenheim, you know, it did get a little slow at times. We got a few battles here and there, a few crashes, a little bit of drama, but I mean, Evie, how are you feeling after your first race?
I feel like I need to have a check in the air to Mandela Pluck and everyone involved in those basically that Star Wars battle at the end of the race.
Yeah, where was that?
They're happy to send it on each other and kind of give us what we wanted. And just a shame that maybe it didn't happen six laps earlier to let us really like take in the action. But you know, you take what you're given, and thank goodness for that hairpin at the end of Parabolica. Sabo, he's a man on a mission. He's just full send, no brakes, and that 8-second lead against Hugo Allen, very impressive. Dove, probably the tragedy of this tale.
Yeah.
Really would love to know and have a chat with the drivers and see just what happened in that contact, because like RKO rules, it came out of nowhere.
Yeah, no, it was very, very painful. But let's take a look at our second track, Evie, Zandvoort, which is, you know, you said it's a bit of a contrast to what we've got going on in Hockenheimring.
Yeah, Rap Battle Spec notes from my little driver insider on Zandvoort. Another 21 laps as we go around this track. The contrast here is, whereas Hockenheim is more staccato with those slow speed corners, heavy braking zones. Zandvoort, it's kind of a lot of trying to just maintain momentum and your minimum speed through those corners. So I think what we call a rap battle earlier. Yeah, these guys have just got to manage their flow around the track.
Man, you just have so many analogies coming out for these tracks. I really love it. I'm so glad to have you on the show here as well. So here we are, drivers now starting to set their qualifying times. They've got 15 minutes to do so. So sit tight, guys. We'll see who comes out on top with the best. We saw, again, you know, it was Antel Rafael Sabo who got the top grid position by qualifying on basically the last lap. And it seems like he does this all the time, even.
Yeah, I mean, like fixed setup, he's just lying in wait, biding his time. Probably not a bad way to do it if you have confidence in your pace. Like, it is something I could never do because I need about a year and a half and good luck to warm up. But yeah, it's a nice problem to have when you're Sabo, because you can set the track, get rubbered in by all the races around you. You can go out there, fly, and just set your time. And it gives, what it does is it denies the other runners a chance to respond to you. So they have to, like, if they set a time that they think they feel really good about, they're not going to know if they're right or wrong until the death, and that's it's got to be a bit of a psychological advantage, I feel.
Yeah, they can't know how good my time is if I don't know how good my time is. A really, really good way to do it. You know, the mind games. Talk to me here about Zandvoort here and some of the corners that we're going through here. Which are the ones that we're going to be looking out for? Again, you know, my question is always, is it turn 1? Because I love seeing that one out of the grid.
Turn 1's not as hectic as somewhere like Monza with its infamous first chicane or those like chaos ones. It's quite a constant radius corner into turn 1, and there's a decent enough run from the start-finish line. Talking to like my driver contacts, the way these corners tend to play out is you'll commit to the turn-in, and to kind of fight the understeer, you've got to spend a lot of time just kind of waiting until you can stand on the gas again. And then if it's not that sort of a corner, you've just got to keep committed and hope the car doesn't get upset. So pay attention to kind of Hugo on the throttle here as he commits in. Downshifts down into like 4th and like really, what's the word I'm looking for, like short shifting. And like he's good and past the apex before he's like committing to the gas again. Like it's a big contrast there. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Big contrast to Hockenheim where these guys are like jumping on it early and really maximizing their acceleration. I'm still laughing about that. It's been for here, it feels like they're waiting an age before they can get on the power again and keep the car behaved.
So very, very controlled about when you hit the gas again. I mean, are these decisions where some of the drivers can take variants of some of these racing lines along the track, right? Like where you're hitting the gas?
The way it was explained to me is like because it's tough to overtake, it tends to be like line of stern sort of stuff. What you probably look for as a winning cue is once you commit to your braking point, if a guy goes another 10 to 15 meters before hitting the brakes, there's a chance that he's like overcooked it, and then you've just got to not get too excited and let the car come to you, as it were. So keep doing your thing, get on the power, and just hope you have a better run on corner exit. The thing that makes this track probably tough for our Porsche drivers is the fact that big old engine and all that weight is in the back of the car. So anyone whose driving style favors understeer, they'll probably have a nicer time of things than a driver who kind of prefers a bit of front, because when the car gets upset, you'll know about it in a hurry.
All right, we have our first set of qualifying laps coming in here, and as a little bit of a surprise, Sabo actually finishes this lap nice and early, locking in the 2nd spot on the grid. So, you know, maybe that can still improve, but Ewan Baker in 1st place there with a sizable 300 milliseconds, pretty good for himself there. Definitely wants to come here on the 2nd track tonight with a little bit of vengeance, right? Things didn't go as planned over on Hockenheim, so here on Zandvoort, setting a great qualifying time, getting that pole position on grid, a great way to start that.
Yeah, 3/10 is a pretty nice gap to have to the runners behind. With 10 minutes left in the session, I'll probably wait a little bit to see if people get a few more representative laps in. You can see everybody diving into the pits to do what they need to do. I would suggest that there'll be a mix of people waiting for better track position. We saw a lot of people running almost in like race formation. That's good for things like the tow and slipstreaming, but because of the need to sort of keep your momentum up, a big old Porsche in your windshield, a clean lap does not make. So these guys will be trying to balance everything, get a clean run, and set. I would expect to see those gaps shorten up before this session is out.
Yeah, we've always seen our qualifying laps be very, very tight right here. Even the 2 seconds from 1st to 15th, it seems pretty large for what we normally get. So, yeah, like you said, things probably looking to tighten up here. Also, probably a few drivers we'd expect to show up there in the top 6 somewhere. Matt Stevens all the way down in 15th for his qualifying. I don't expect that one to remain. I definitely see him going further up. Now, currently the leader of the Championship Cup, well ahead in points by a handful, I would say, after the way things went on Hockenheim. A really good finish for him over there, but again, here for Zandvoort, he will certainly want to be getting a better qualifying spot than 15.
Yeah, Stevens kind of the patron saint of consistency at the moment. Like his aside from last race, like his best performance on paper seems to be all the way back in week 1 with a P4 finish. And he's always just been P5 in race 2, going back through the data here, 6 and 4, so he's kind of always been thereabouts. And like you say, it's very atypical for him to be in P15. I suspect that he was part of that rush hour traffic through Sector 3 that we saw earlier on. And I would probably expect him to trade places with the likes of Timothy Vaughan, who was sitting in sort of a outlier positions relative to where he usually sits as he drops down to P6 there.
Yeah, Dylan Jordan, the original front runner of the championship, now sitting down just a little bit further, has jumped in and pushing Timothy Vaughan down a spot as well. Other drivers that are about where we expect, right? You've got Ben Stewart, just sitting at the very end of that top pack. We see him there quite often. Whether he can test with them on the actual race is really the question we want to ask when it comes to it. And then, of course, Michael Healy, again, another front runner at the start of today, was tied in first place. So he did a little better than we saw Dylan Jordan do. He'll be wanting to improve that here. Could even contest Matt Stevens, especially if Stevens keeps his qualifying spot here, although it has changed. Or did he get shoved below 15? I think he did. Yeah, 16.
Stevens down to 16th, yeah, so he's falling down the ladder out of those hallowed highlighted zones. Yeah, interesting you're noting the likes of Ben Stewart. He's having an off week relative to the Italian double header. He was good for 7th at Monza and 2nd at Imola, so this will be a bit of a gut punch to back that up with a disappointing run at Hockenheim. So, hopefully the Netherlands will come up with a better story for him.
Yeah, he's had some really fun battles too, right? A very fun driver to watch when he's either contesting a driver, or someone is trying to contest him, trying to get past anything that he leaves open. He plays very well on the defense, so definitely watch out if anyone's on his tail. It's exciting to see, but it's really whether he can close the gap between the person in front of him. He'll overtake a bunch of drivers and then just be stuck between the front pack, or stuck behind the front pack, but far enough back that he just can't close the gap. Hopefully that's looking to change this week.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing about these format of racing is that the 2 races gives you a couple of bites at the apple to sort of change your fate, and you've also got the little bit of a randomizer where certain drivers will divvy up their prep time based on where they feel. You've got a huge range of how people approach this tournament. The person I've been chatting with is on what I'd probably call it the lighter side, just going for a full race distance on each just to get a feel for how the tyres may wear and how the car may behave. Those of others who are maybe balancing other real life commitments, you might find that you get a bit of a jump on them because you've put in a couple more hours.
Yeah, and actually it is quite wild how they have to have such a wide variety of track knowledge to be able to compete in sim racing, right? You compare that to real world racing where, it's not quite often that you're going to be driving multiple tracks within a day, let alone, over a month's time. So these guys, how they divvy up their practice time, like you said, very, very important. How do you approach it, Evie, when you're competing, right? You've got 2 tracks coming up. Are you focusing all your hours into one to go really well?
How do I approach it? Slowly. I'm never one that is noted for a huge amount of talent on track. But when it comes down to it, thankfully you've got the internet at your fingertips, so you've got, all of human knowledge at your fingertips to prepare for tonight. Had a couple conversations with some quick dudes, just see how they approach things. YouTube is invaluable as always for just getting a sight on how quick they'll approach the lap. So either you can find the ghost of a world record holder, something like iRacing, and a lot of those sims will hold in-car telemetry data, so you can see when and where you should be on and off the brakes, how you should be tipping in the car, and then you just kind of adjust to suit your flavor of driving style. And then for someone like me who's a little bit talentless, it all comes down to seat time. So you really got to carve out a few hours in the day to bank in those laps, really feel what the car should be doing as you go through. In the sim, you're kind of married to only what you can get through your steering wheel and the force feedback. And then if you're, that actually leads into an interesting point about sim to real life crossover. Anyone coming from full metal racing, a lot of comments that I hear is they're missing a lot of the conversation from their backside. It turns out a lot of information about what the car's doing comes to you through the seat and just what you're feeling in your body in terms of G-forces and how those tires are connected to the road.
Is that the next step in evolution of racing simulators? Is getting the seat that simulates it, power seating?
I would be really hesitant to say yes. Like these kids that are able to like win world championships and things with entry-level wheels. Like if you're quick, you're quick, you're quick. So it really just comes down to being able to get your inputs precise, consistent. I mean, Matt Stevens has proved that in this tournament alone, like consistency is the key to finishing well. I don't think he's had a P1 across the whole tournament, and here he is challenging for the overall lead. So if you can smooth out the peaks and troughs in your performance, however you do that, that's how you be a quick driver.
Consistency, yeah, no, I like to hear it, and it's certainly been showing off its dividends in the championship so far. 5 races out of 8 are completed. We're now hitting our 6th track, and qualifying is soon to end. Only 2 minutes left, and then a little bit of overtime for the drivers to clean things up, clean up that last lap there, but no real massive changes as someone goes super wide there on the track. Yeah, no real changes, right? Ewan Baker locked in that time very early on. Antal, you know, Mr. Sabo, he's closed the gap a little bit, shaved off about 150 milliseconds, but is still not quite beating on that one. So won't have the pole position here. Do you reckon that's going to change for Sabo? He had clean air all of Hockenheim. Now that he's going to battle Ewan Baker, who is out for vengeance, by the way, how do you reckon that's going to change for Sabo?
If I could ask very sweetly, I'd like to ride on board with him and see where he and Dove are on their laps. Given that we're 1 minute out, they're either on their last laps or just winding up to start it. So we should know in about 90 seconds about how long it takes to undercook some noodles to see how those boys will position themselves on the grid. If it does shake it out this way, and I'd be reticent to call it early, given that there's only about a 10th in it, it'll be really interesting. If Sabo's managed to calm down his, let's say, extravagant driving style when it comes to going wheel to wheel, it's his to sort out. And as we see that, we just see, oh no, I'm dreaming. But yeah, it'll be a matter of how they go wheel to wheel. And he gets very leery carrying speed through that right-hander, I think it was. Yeah, the story is not written yet. Look at him go.
Yeah, still looking in to just try and claw back that pole position. You know, the reason I ask is that, you know, getting that clean air was so important to him on Hockenheim. It basically made it trivial for him to hold that lead, just continue doing those good laps. And getting it here will allow him to do that just once more, allowing him to skip any of these battles, any of that drama. Let's see how his lap does change here. Rafael Sabo coming into the end. No, just going to go for the pits, and it is going to be a second-place grid position for him.
Yep, he'll be heartened to know there's only a 10th in it as he aborts on that lap. We'll have the others just kind of shaking themselves out shortly. Probably the other one to point out here is Brandon Dove, who is thereabouts and probably got vengeance on his mind. Currently holding on to provisional P3, and then Michael Healy, just a couple of hundredths behind him still. One day I'll work out how numbers work. And then Timothy Vaughan, continuing to have a pretty strong week. I'm going to claim that as he's been my little chat subject in my homework for this race. Sitting in P7 for number 74, that is pretty heartening to see. And I believe we were talking about Ben Stewart throughout the course of this qualifying session. His 38-1 looking pretty strong.
Yeah, again, Ben, I think he actually gained a spot since we talked about him last, so well done to him. He's going to be happy with that, I reckon. Still has some pretty tough drivers to battle against, but of course, I think the surprise for me is going to be Matt Stevens. Not super far down there, still in P9, but the guy who's currently leading the championship, you know, he may slip behind in points here unless he really gets on his battling boots and tries to overtake a few of these cars, perhaps even a little bit early on. Would have to battle against the likes of Ben Stewart and, you know, even Brandon Dove later on if he wants to really contest it. Very, very tough drivers to beat.
There is a sort of rule of thumb around my circle of friends, and that it is never too late in the day for Ever Petrie to be wrong. We've called out that Zandvoort may be a tougher track to overtake, and that might hurt someone like Matt Stevens, who we've highlighted as someone with pretty good racecraft. I'm waiting for him to flip the script and advance through the fields based on where he's finished.
All right, well, I believe these are the finalized qualifying spots here, so it doesn't look like Matt Stevens gained a spot, so he's still down there in P9, but Bjorn Baker taking that pole position with Rafael Sabo on his tail, just in there in number 2. Moving down the field, though, Dylan Jordan, a little bit further down than we would have really have expected, but actually, I believe that was a bit of a mistake there. He did actually qualify pretty well, so we'll get back into that a little bit after the break, of course. But before we go there, Evie, you know, again, what are your surprises there? Is it just Matt Stevens in P9 for a small surprise?
Yeah, I mean, like, we highlighted him as not being the strongest qualifier. So at the top, I would have said no, not a surprise, but I mean, based off race 1, yeah, he should look to advance.
All right, well, we're going to go to a quick break. When we return, we're going to be getting onto the track with Zandvoort.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
My world is my storytelling.
My world is diverse.
Our world.
My world is astrophysics. It's always been a dream of mine.
I don't know what my career pathway will be.
I approach architecture from the point of view of my culture.
I want to contribute to my people.
It's a way I can give back.
I want to change the perception of engineers.
I want to take my tohu home when I graduate.
Right now, it's about me.
And this is my chapter.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Samsung iRacing NZ Cup Championship. We're here again at the Samsung Odyssey Arc Action Station to talk about what we saw go down in qualifying on Zandvoort. The real story to tell has got to be the two drivers that dropped the ball in Hockenheim. It's Ewan Baker and, of course, Brandon Dove up there in the top three. Ewan Baker actually getting pole position. He's going to be the driver to watch for sure because, of course, he's going to want to come back and grab some sweet championship points. But of course, right in the middle of that top three is Antal Rafael Sabo, who is again going to be looking to put on a really good show for us tonight. Evie, we've had a good show in Hockenheim. What are we expecting for Zandvoort?
Zandvoort, we're expecting fast-flowing, high-tempo, maximum momentum around this track here. We think the overtaking will be at a premium, so these qualifying sessions probably all important, I'd say. So very thankful to Samsung for giving us the widest angle view possible of the situation. Looking at the starting grid, Ewan Baker takes the pole position spot with a 37.411, and Antal Rafael Sabo, the redemption man of this week, just 1/10 back. Then we've got Brandon Dove hot on the heels and looking to make a name for himself after an unfortunate crash, and Healy hot on his heels. Dylan Jordan with a 137.940. Stewart, Vaughan and Henry round out your top 8 of that starting grid. We move down to Matt Stevens, unlucky in love at 131.180, and Carl Sampson at 10th spot. Hugo Allen is followed by Darren Lobb. Then we've got Anderson, Thomas Kircher, Pluck and Jessen, a 138.847 to his name. Brody Scott takes P17 with a 38.854. Enrico Grond looking pretty grand in 18th, 139.0. Brad Wybrow, 19. Hamish Cleland in 20th. Then we've got Captain Hayden Kirk in 21, and Ian Jambor bringing up the rear of the pack, 22-22. We love it when it matches. Looking over the track here, everybody is arranged lovely, pretty as a picture at the start line. Pole position on the left-hand side of the track, so he will be on the outside, and we'll be hoping for a very clean getaway as they make their run down to turn 1. He'll get onto the brakes, tip that car in, and then wait a calendar year before he's allowed to hit that loud pedal, at which point he'll hope that old mate on the inside doesn't send it on his inside, and they are away and racing. Pretty clean start here from P2. Smite, take it away.
Yeah, looking at the top two here, Antal really going in on the inside and actually pulling away out of the second position, straight into pole position out of that turn 1. Really good moves from him now on Ewan Baker and Brandon Dove. Hot on the vengeance trail after what went down on Hockenheim. They want to come in here and smash the championship points, but they're going to have to get past Sabo to do so.
Big crash, well, not a big crash, but a crash in turn 2 there. Looks to be heartbreak for Hugo Allen, the damaged terminal, as Thomas Kircher will log his second DNF for the night. Looks like they're coming together, just kind of that's all she wrote. Unlucky for those two involved. Robert Henry riding on board with them now. Pretty good look here, and if you listen to the engine note, you'll see just how patient they have to be on the power here. Waiting, it just seems to be an age before they can jump on that noisy pedal on the right and commit to making moves up the field. Henry will be looking at the back end of Dylan Jordan. Samsung wing about the only thing wider than that display over the quali analysis.
Yeah, the Odyssey Action Arc Station being super wide as well. Now, moving up, Robert Henry on board with him. A driver we don't normally see up here, but we'll be contesting to try and get a few points. Of course, now we're into a little bit more single file at the moment. Driver's not really looking to contest, at least for probably a few laps here. Brandon Dove, probably the closest, most likely. Ben Stewart as well has a pretty good chance, and he does try and go super wide. Unfortunately, it looks like he was really punished for that, and is going to drop about 5, 6, 7 places there. Crushing for Ben Stewart.
Ben Stewart will not be loving life at the moment there. That is a classic story when it comes to one-make racing, where if you get just an inch off line, it seems like you open the door for the rest of the entire field. I feel your pain, brother. I had a similar bit of tragedy in one of my races not too long ago. Matt Stevens will take a quick second to point him out. He's already up to P5 and loving life. Ben Stewart here diving up the inside, and he will probably not feel the most sympathy for Nathan Anderson, who runs wide through the right-hander. Like, that might be the story of this race, where it's not so much you affecting overtakes, where it is you dining out on mistakes that are made. Nathan Anderson, welcome to the grid, as well as you were missing in a previous race at Hockenheim Ring. I believe it was a missed call, so I'm sorry to name and shame you on air there.
Oh, no, you got to get in the seat in time, Anderson. But yeah, no, Nathan Anderson is a driver I really enjoy watching as well. He's usually around that middle of the pack, but when he gets his chances, he is a very aggressive driver. He'll take the shot any chance he can get, so look to see who he's contesting against. We'll have to catch up to Enrico Gron just a little bit there. However, I'm always excited to see him. I was definitely missing him back on Hockenheim to see what kind of curveballs he'd throw into the track, but for now, he might be a little quiet. He just needs a little bit of time to catch up to Enrico.
Yeah, the first lap or two, now up to lap 3, just they tend to be the easiest time to sow for chaos, as everyone kind of jostles for position, see who the big winners and losers are off the start. Until Rafael Sabo, it's like he was in a different car with the way he got away at the start there, and Anderson very clean, fresh and clean, as he made the move on our victim, Enrico Grant.
Yeah, and I thought it would take him a little longer to close the gap, but he already just went for it. He'll have to close a much bigger gap this time to go for any more battles, but we'll maybe tune in back on this racer a little bit later on, because of course he will be looking to do exactly just what we saw. Enrico Gron, a little bit rough to lose that one there. Also Brad Wybrow, a little bit close in the battle there, but moving up the field, I think, is going to be fun, because you've got Mandela Pluck, then Ben Stewart and Darren Lobb, even Timothy Vaughan, all clumped a little bit close together.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the coming together, I think, based on qualifying speeds, would be the likes of Timothy Vaughan and Stewart. Keep an eye on Stewart's delta relative to Lobb. If he starts to gain or makes a move, that'll be pretty fascinating to watch. Because when you deal with these differences of speed, you've got a sort of situation developing where someone like Grond or others they'll either be a cork in the bottle and hold up those behind. If it was me in that position, I was never really willing to ruin someone's race I knew was quicker, so I'd either not fight so hard or just straight up get out of the way. If anyone remembers Madzi AU from my Project Cars 2 days, that was one instance where I got it horribly wrong, but we can skip past that. Riding on board here with Dylan Jordan, like this is a pretty interesting sort of battle we're seeing develop. Matt Stevens, he's just very calm and collected. If you watch his behavior on track, he's like, he knows he just has to manage his own pace here as Jordan winds his way through Zandvoort as they concertina for these big braking zones. The worst thing Jordan could do at that moment is panic, look in his mirrors, feel like he needs to get on the gas sooner. because the natural kind of consequence of that is like he runs the risk of stepping his back end out and opening the door. So if he just puts the blinders on, bees a racehorse for a little bit of time, he'll just be able to focus on the road ahead of him and hold Dylan Jordan at bay. Very frustrating for the man behind there as they wind their way through the track in lap 4 of 21, but sort of them's the breaks. Manage your pace, don't make mistakes, and it kind of all goes in from there.
Yeah, and so Matt Stevens definitely pushing up ahead really well there, leading the pack, has a bit of a gap to catch up to the top 4 with Michael Healy there on the tail end of that little group there. Ewan Baker, after falling to Sabo after the the race start, a bit rough, and the question is, is he going to be able to actually catch up to Sabo, because Sabo just such a good consistent racer when he's not pushing the limits too far or the victim of any other sorts of shenanigans. So the question is, will Ewan Baker be able to do it? And of course, he's still got Brandon Dove and Michael Healy who could close the gap behind him, get into a battle of their own, and then really start making him work for his money there, because he's done very well to get in this position. But him and Brandon Dove, like I said before, disaster on Hockenheim means they really need this one to go well.
Yeah, if you're Ewan Baker, you're probably a little frustrated to be caught napping is a harsh way of putting it, but to let it go into the first turn knowing what someone like Sabo is capable of when he has clean air, like, you just kind of feel like opportunity lost, I feel. Someone like Brandon Dove, if I was the one who ran into the back of Brandon Dove and I had that person behind me, I'm not saying that like there would be contact, but I'd be nervous. So that could be interesting before all is said and done. But all jokes aside, no, it'd be a really curious, if somewhat familiar, top 4 that we're seeing so far. Matt Stevens probably a little bit on a bit of an island, 3 seconds back from that sort of main battle pack, and he's got Dylan Jordan sort of pressuring him from behind. So if he can kind of steel himself and ride it out over this sort of next phase of the race, we've got a lot of room for chaos. Like if the storyline has been the top runners get fighty eventually.
Oh no, Ben
Stewart, untidy!
Oh,
You gotta love it when they make you pay attention like that, don't you?
Yeah, and I gotta love it when they recover so well, too, because look at how well he's held the pace. He's still going to be able to contest anything in front of him, right? Darren Love just will be leaving the door open at occasional times. But I also, before that happened, I actually wanted to update on one of the players I was looking forward to was Nathan Anderson. He got sent to the pits. He's all the way down on 20th at this point.
Sent to the pits, and it looks like he's retired the car. So he's probably not, just kind of not loving his lot in life. Interested to see what's happening. Ben Stewart, he is really working that wheel as he fights for his life in P10. Be curious to see how accurate these hand movements are to like the actual driver inputs, because like he is sawing at that wheel. Like it is busy in that cockpit. He is a bottle of Linseed all the way from being that Irish guy on TikTok that was scored all the old souls.
God, you have something for everything, don't you, EB? There's just always something. I love it. I love having you on the show here. Maybe we gotta send Monkey Matt away a little more often. But
I wouldn't dare step on his toes.
I'm sure he'd let you. But look at this, right? You got a good little pack here. Almost 2 little groups of 3 there. But if behind where Robert Henry is sitting, right, if that pushes forward a little bit, that can really start to contest. Matt Stevens as well. He's dropped a position now to Dylan Jordan, who's managed to jump up ahead and really start now making that both drivers actually really start working for this one. Again, each of these corners needing to hold that flow, needing to find their good racing line, where they're braking and where they're going to push it. Robert Henry, he looks like he wants to test the water. And even in front of him, you see Matt Stevens testing it too. Can he slip one by Dylan Jordan?
Yeah, he's ready to fight. Look at how late he is willing to be pulling up the car. He is letting Matt Stevens know that he's waiting to take that position on track. All important here on Zandvoort. You can see the running order in this train that we're seeing, very processional. So now that Dylan Jordan has got past Stevens, the key for him here is we're all singing from the same song sheet. Just keep it tidy, keep it on the track, and don't make any mistakes, because it's going to be hard work for them to just send it on you.
Yeah, Dylan Jordan, another front runner earlier today, right in the three-way tie, but he did drop it in Hockenheim. He is also kind of like Ewan Baker and Brandon Dove, wanting to push it further a little bit. You know, didn't drop it too far, but did lose out to Matt Stevens, widening that gap now, or in fact creating a gap in the championship leaderboard. Ewan Baker here really needs to get some of these points, because he was actually tailing that three-way tie. He was in, you know, technically second position, but fourth overall, and 2 points behind the front runners, and then bombed it in Hockenheim. So a P1 finish here, while the rest of them are all battling out around 5th place, that would be really good for him. May even actually close the gap, Evie. Maybe even put him in first.
Yeah, I mean, the goggled man racing in VR here, like, he's got a lot to consider in terms of tournament implications. But when you're chasing someone like Antal Rafael Sabo around Zandvoort, look, just watching him over the last lap or two, I get the feeling that Sabo's kind of turning the wick up a little bit. He's got the mannerisms of someone that's a little bit sick of having someone so close to him. He was carrying a lot of speed through that last turn at the start of the last lap, and he's just got, I don't know, he's got the look of someone who's just willing to turn that wick up like we saw at Hockenheim. So, you know, ball is in Baker's court here to hang with him and not get dropped, because we know that if you kind of give Sabo an inch, she'll take a mile in the form of an 8-second lead.
Yeah, we saw how massive that gap got on Hockenheim, so Baker needs to stay hot on his tail, and to his credit, he's doing exactly that. Not a lot of drivers can really give it to Sabo, but Baker here is doing it today. The only other one really so far has been Brandon Dove, who has really battled for almost entire tracks with Sabo. Now it's Ewan Baker's turn to show up, and especially with the fact that he's got Brandon Dove. Yeah, he's a second behind, but you know, we got a lot of laps to go, so Brandon Dove can be shaving off his seconds each lap, slowly closing that gap, and then he could be in the battle too. So there's almost a time limit on how easy this is going to be for Baker. Right now it's just against Sabo, but soon it could be against Dove as well.
Yeah, consider this fight slightly equalized coming out of the last turn relative to their last lap. Sabo failed to gain as much time on Baker as they did the lap previous. The curious thing is they managed to pull a 10th or 2 on Brandon Dove. So, like, not looking good for any sort of designs that Brandon may have on revenge against Mr. Baker. Michael Healy hanging in there, another second back again, and then the loneliness sort of begins at the Dylan Jordan mark, who is 4 seconds back, and Stevens hot on his tail. That seems to be the formation of the next trail again. Eyes towards someone like Timothy Vaughan. The double duck seems to be reeling in Robert Henry, so I'll be curious to see if he or Lob make a move over the next couple of laps.
Yeah, Lob, another interesting one, right? He did pretty well back over on Hockenheim, showing his face up there, and you know, had to contest with some real top-tier drivers. Timothy Vaughan, another one who would be quite a tough battler. He's going to have to try and get past him as well. So, you know, a lot of drivers actually still within a second of each other. Like you said, it's really just that gap from 4th to 5th where Dylan Jordan leads the group. And yeah, I don't see that gap closing anytime soon, short of some disaster in the top 4. So that could actually look pretty devastating. You know, Matt Stevens is constantly just backed out by Dylan Jordan. He'll lose any opportunity to increase his points, and Baker may close that gap, even with a second place finish. You know, 23 points, still quite a lot. Yeah,
it's just a funny thing that, like, these guys have to hold in their head lap to lap and race to race. Like, one race being what it is, will have knock-on effects going into the last week. Someone like Matt will probably want to get the work done now. I would, if I was Matt, I would back myself as being the better racer, and if I can get past Dylan Jordan, I would suggest that he might be like a cork in the bottle sort of situation. And if Stevens can get the hard bit done of actually getting past, he should be able to hold on. And Whereas someone like sort of Timothy Vaughan, who has been sort of, he seems to be in his, fate designated spot here in P8 tonight, and here at Zandvoort. He's sort of in a more like aspirational position where if he can get behind Robert Henry, like that's a good time for him.
Yeah, a lot of positions right now where drivers can be pretty happy if it finishes this way. Of course, like I said, the only real ones are probably like Matt Stevens, depending on how hard he wants that first place in the position, continuing to stay first place in the Cup, or if he's going to be looking at Ewan Baker thinking, oh, like have I actually been adding up the points like since that last race and know that Ewan Baker could overtake me here? Do I know that I need to start challenging Michael Healy because he might actually come up ahead as well? So there's a lot of things where it's like, obviously you're a driver, you get on the track, you want to get the best spot possible. But when it comes to risk assessment, it's like, what's actually worth it? What am I here to do? Am I here to just get my best position possible, or am I here to push the limits and try something to get me in the money or at the very top of the money?
Yeah, they like in terms of considering like all these sorts of like the great saying of picking your battles, right? That being what it is, I think racing drivers are pretty singular-minded, where like these guys are just be like see the car in front of them and just want to get past them no matter what. Someone like Lob, like he's going to be keen to ascend. In terms of like where specifically you might pick these battles, we're coming up on the we're thereabouts on the halfway point of this race, and we're running clockwise in these corners at a pretty constant radius, like turning right. So like where points would be somewhere like your back rear tire, your back left tire and your front left, just because that's taking all the load as you like rocket through these right-handers. Turns 13 and 14, and probably somewhere like turn 9, which looks a little bit tight on the board. They're going to be quite torturous for these cars, so I'm hoping there might be a situation developing where like these drivers who are tucked in tight behind their rivals are starting to pressure a little bit, and then as we get later in the race and people start making their moves, maybe we're going to see some mistakes get forced as people go for traction that isn't there.
Yeah, always got to keep an eye on the tires. Of course, these drivers have all done hours upon hours of practice on this track. They'll know where their tire wear really starts coming into play, but under the pressure of the race with 23 other top drivers from around New Zealand, that's where the real test of skill will start to come into play. We're seeing a few of these gaps widen a little bit between the packs of drivers, right? You've got Robert Henry, who is still just barely chasing a second behind Matt Stevens, but speaking of Matt Stevens, right, you can see he is brick wall behind Dylan Jordan, who himself has just a massive gap from him to Michael Healy.
Yeah, Dylan Jordan is living his best life as the Wikipedia entry for our cork in the bottle. And he's probably typified just how hard it is to overtake at this track. Stevens, that gap seems to be pretty constant, so while you'd never say he's happy being behind another racer, I would suggest that he's just sort of chilling in there and biding his time. Like, the race will come to him, hopefully, and he should be able to get a position if he keeps the pressure up. Riding on board now with Brad Jesson, thank you, helping me out there. Be cool to see how we're going here. Like, if we followed his rivals in Hamish Cleland and Enrico Grant for a little bit, be curious to see how these cars are behaving. Like, are they a little nervous as they commit to tipping in? Like, do the cars protest at all on power? How's he doing?
Yeah,
he's looking pretty confident as he gasses on, isn't he?
Yeah, it's a pretty confident look coming out from these guys at the back, and that's the thing. Like, we don't get to see these guys at the back quite a lot because, on top of the fact, we're interested in the winners, right? It's also the fact that, the gaps usually end up quite big for these guys, but this little battle here, 15, 14, 13, really, really fun to watch. Hamish Cleland, Enrico Grant, they get to put on their own little tests, right? Because they are still in the top 24 best drivers from around the country that we brought here onto iRacing. And so it's good to give them a little opportunity to show off their skills, especially in actual battles here where they're not just sort of, a few laps in, starting to go back to time trial, qualifying laps. You actually get to see how they compete against each other.
Yeah, these guys are testing themselves through the field. It is a beautiful fact about this grid is that regardless of where they shake out on track, they are all pretty much capable of standing toe-to-toe with each other. Clearly getting very untidy under brakes there. We are starting to see evidence of these cars just becoming a little bit protesty as the race drags on, aren't we?
Yeah, and that's always exciting to see, right? I mean, we kind of saw it on Hockenheim where there wasn't really much action until the very end, and maybe we're getting a little bit more of that here. Like you said, it could be down to just drivers knowing, okay, look, there's a little less traction on these tires. This is my opening. Someone's pushed the limits where they don't have that limit any longer thanks to their tire wear. And so this could be where we start really getting these exciting moments. Even at the back here, in the, from 15th place up, Brad Jessen still sitting there in P15. A few rough guys to contest with there, but no, we're really waiting for that tire wear just to get a little bit worse there for people's limits to really starting to be pushed.
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the fidelity of a simulator like iRacing is Brody Scott makes a nice little move. He's going to capitalize on a little bit of a baby lockup from car number 9, Brad Jessen. Did well to get more momentum on the exit of the turn and, fight back, but you can look at that. Every time Jessen is committing to the brace, you see a puff of smoke from the front right this time as he's just getting a little bit eager, getting a little bit out of sorts. Brody Scott will see that as a bit of a winning cue and will just turn up that wick, pile that pressure on. And it just kind of harkens to the point I was trying to make a little bit here. A little look on the inside. Get it done, son! Nothing doing. No, as the race drags on, you've got things remaining dynamic and changing. It makes it impossible for these guys to be robotic about banking the same laps after lap. So, a little bit of a baby touch there. So fuel loads are getting lighter, the tires are wearing, brakes get hot, and they get hot in different corners. So, all these guys have to keep that in mind. You can see a little bit of protest as he gets on the power, the tire wear setting in. It's just so much to manage and balance and keep mindful of as you think about attacking and defending. It's great. It's addictive.
Yeah, never ever the same game. I mean, just with so many variables, like you said, going on, no two races can really truly be said to be the same. Of course, looking at the leaderboard, it feels like this could be the case, but this battle is the best one we've got at the moment. Hamish Cleland, we move into turn 1 after this lap completes, and he could be looking to push himself a little further past Enrico Grond, who has dropped now behind Brad Wybrow. We've been seeing those three as well in front, also battling for it. Hamish really pushing it here, looking for anything, but you know what? Enrico's giving him nothing.
They're dancing with danger. Hamish Cleland's showing a little bit of nose. I thought Grond was going to collect that on his back right quarter panel there, and that would have been just murder on the dance floor to borrow one from Ms. Alice Bextor. Huge commitment here as we winded the power through this little section of S's as we charge down. Look at him tip it in there. That is a handful of races. He has to wait an eternity to be able to commit to the power. The toe being what it is, it's effective in within a second here. Good exit as he keeps going through this corner that feels like it's got infinity apexes. But he's just going to need a drastically better exit and a run up on Rico in front to be able to effect a proper overtake. But this has got to be crazy pressure.
Yeah, you can see him maybe looking to see if there was a line he could take there to go past Enrico Grond, but Enrico just playing so defensively here, not opening the door even a little bit. Oh, Hamish, wobbles a little bit, but he'll be all right here. Again, just trying to see where the gap is going to be, where the opening will present itself. But Enrico's having none of it. He's not letting him by. And while it might not mean much in terms of championship points back here, it still means a lot for pride and honor for these two drivers.
I mean, as a career back marker, this is what it's about. Oh, good bit of toe here through turn 1. Let's see how it is later on the brakes. Big touch. They're going to collect each other. That is that is a heartbreaking way to go into that battle. I believe it's iRacing that has that quirk where if you touch, it's like falling into a gravity well of the other car and you're just kind of married into going into the kiddie litter. That is not how we wanted to see that one end, but pleasure to be able to see that battle and see these guys take it to the limit. speaking as a battler and being broadcast where we were, I forgot to mute my phone for one round of racing. They were on board with me as I set up an overtake, and my phone blew up from my dad, apparently celebrating and telling everybody at the casino where he was watching a race who his son was. So, no, everyone up and down this grid is honoured and feels privileged to have their action shown on screen. Sorry it didn't go your way, boys, but, you know, thanks for putting on that show.
Hey, look, that's, you know, very, very wholesome to hear, you know, despite what happened, you know, always good to have that family support coming into it, because, you know, there are a lot of young racers on this. You know, you compare it to your traditional motorsport, right, where, you know, age is a little bit higher, but, you know, you have people coming in just fresh off 18 that are just incredible racers. Of course, you still have, you know, boomers pushing 30 like me, but, say pushing, I'm 31, but, you know, they're coming in, you got all ages coming into sim racing, and I think that's another beautiful thing about it. On top of the family support, you know, you got mum and dad coming in and cheering you in. You know, they might not understand, you know, how, you know, sim racing has evolved so far, you know, or maybe they do, you know, if they're supporting you the whole way through. I know a lot of parents learn a lot once their kids get into esports as well, so really awesome to see that kind of support coming out.
Yeah, sim racing in the last few years, funnily enough, I think we had 2020 to thank for a lot of it. It just seems to be the great gateway into motorsports. Increasingly, I've heard of crossover and integration between virtual and real racing. No matter the discipline, we've got a lot of people using things like Assetto Corsa and its tyre models to get the hang of drifting, things like that. Matt Stevens just threatening here. And things like iRacing and being able to just jump on and race sessions, like, invaluable for things like racecraft and being able to get your reps in. Like, I know of a lot of young karters that just work it into their rotation. Out of love, like, it's the same way that you play backyard sports whenever you're not on pitch properly, and you just keep going because, like, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than petrol.
It is indeed. And so fastest lap actually now being set as well. Didn't quite catch who that was, but, you know, it's looking pretty good for them, whoever got it. Oh, it's Ewan Baker actually claiming that one as well. So I think it's been that one since the very beginning as well, perhaps even the first lap, which is actually somewhat surprising considering how the beginning of the race did go. But Ewan Baker, he has been battling against Sabo for the longest time here. And this is actually, you know, when we see Sabo in the battles at the front, it's actually been against Brandon Dove, and Sabo was the one in second place. So this time he's the one playing defensively from pole position, and so far it's been incredible defensively against Ewan Baker, who hasn't really pushed it just yet, but with 4 laps to go, tyre wear coming up, Evie, I think we may see something be pushed by Ewan Baker.
I think I'm thinking what you're thinking, Pat, as we get into the closing stages of this race. 3 tenths back, and it feels like he's been in that position in perpetuity. Like, really curious to see what happens here as he winds up the pressure, sort of turns up that wick. Running at this pace for so long has got to be a nightmare for both of them. I mean, I have it on the other races authority that, like, the dirty air isn't that bad for following, and therefore, like, Baker probably hasn't been too much harder on his tyres, but I mean, we're going to find out pretty conclusively before this race is done, aren't we?
Yes, indeed. The question is, does Ewan Baker want to send it against someone like Sabo? Because he needs these points, and if things go wrong, it could actually just spell out any chance of contending the top spot of the championship, maybe even anything in the top 6. So he's been consistent, apart from Hockenheim. He just needs to lock in. Another P2 would be great. But, you know, we know that hungry racer spirit. You know, these drivers want to challenge everything. Like you said, you know, they see a car in front of them, you know, half a second in front. That's something you can challenge, and you want to go for it.
Yeah, and you can see him pushing his braking point just as much as he dares into that last, I think it was a left-hander. But even at turn 1, pretty interesting. Like, he showed a little bit of a look like he was going to dive up the inside, and no response from Sabo. So I don't think he's too worried about looking at his mirrors that much. Like, he doesn't seem overly nervous. So it's very much balls in your court, Baker, to show Sabo something and put the pressure on, because at the moment he seems pretty comfortable just to run at his own pace.
And it feels like Brandon Dove as well. You know, he's got a massive gap now behind Ewan Baker. So he'll be leading his own little pack there. So it really is just Sabo and Baker here going for this little battle here. Baker, he wanted to see if he could maybe squeeze in there, but I don't think he was going to be able to find that gap. And yet Sabo is never, ever going to let the door open for him. Sabo is just going to keep playing defensively. And we talk about how much Baker needs these points. Sabo needs them desperately, to the point where, you know, if he doesn't take out pole position here, again, even though he won Hockenheim, he'd still possibly be out of the top 6 contention, which is where all the prize money is. So he needs his pole position just as much as Baker does.
Yeah, the exit to the last turn seems to be all important here. So I think, like, if we want to start getting excited, kind of look to a gap under 2/10 coming out of the last turn at the end of this lap. Mid lap, this seems to be pretty good from what we're seeing here. You can see Baker does a pretty good job of like reeling him in over the course of the lap. But yeah, like look at this view from Antal Rafael Sabo. Like, he's just tipping it in. Like, his hands look markedly calmer than Ben Stewart, who were riding with before, committing to those movements. Not too much of a dance, and he seems pretty good and decisive about when he applies that power. And he seems to have done a good job protecting his tyres, because getting on the power doesn't seem too protesty relative to the other runners that we've ridden on board today.
Very impressive to be able to not only battle Baker, but also look after the wear of your tyres, which, you know, like you were saying, could have been very, very critical. Baker just absolutely right on Sabo's tail, but with only 2 laps to go, you've got to wonder where Baker may look to pull the trigger here. If you are looking to do it in the final 2 laps, Evie, what part of Zandvoort are you really going to be trying to go against Sabo here?
This track is really cruel. This might be the move here. You've got to do it on the long straight, longest part of the track. Use the toe. You can see him moving defensively, covers off the inside. Battle of the late breakers here as they hit their breaker point. Very curious here, and Sabo has done a very good job of blocking the inside, but we've got that dive to the inside, protesting under power as Baker jumps on the gas, and that seems to be the window of opportunity that Sabo needs to hold on. That is basically like what it takes to get past here in Zandvoort. That was the rookie how to make an overtake and make a fight of it.
Oh no, so Baker going to be devastated that it didn't go through. It's a valiant effort for sure. Just a 1/10 of a second between the 2 front runners here, but Sabo on the final lap looking to connect another pole position finish here after his success in Hockenheim. Desperately needed 2 wins here, a victim of many penalties throughout the championship. Baker still challenging him, but no way is he going to be allowed the inside track here. Sabo holding him out. He knows what Baker's trying to do and will match him at every turn.
Yeah, this is just excellent defensive driving from Antal Rafael Sabo, putting the car where he needs to be to put Ewan Baker like just under all the pressure to make a move. Look at the inside. This is the only option he's got left.
Oh no!
This is going to be pushy. Huge contact. That is going to be a conversation with the stewards in a drag race out of the turn. Looks like they're going to be gently. That's pretty well redressed, all things considered. Baker and Sabo, they understood what was up there. That was Sabo's corner as Baker committed to the dive. He had no other options in his hip pocket. They knew they had a long enough gap to Dove so they could redress, give that position back, and you know, finish in the proper order. But that is typifies how hard it is to overtake at Zandvoort.
You know, you have Brandon Dove slightly closer to the front runners there, and that could have been a very interesting conversation coming out from the stewards. I think it still will be, but at the end of the day, it does end up leaving Sabo in pole position as the laps complete. Baker to tail him, Dove, Healy, Stevens in their own pack behind them, Dylan Jordan slightly behind. And we're going to wrap everything else up. No more battles going on between the drivers. This is going to mean a lot for championship points. I'm very interested to find out how the penalties end up going down. This may be one that is decided throughout the week, even rather than as we are finishing up the show tonight. But this is it here for Zandvoort. It was a great little battle between Sabo and Baker. Sabo definitely proving himself the better driver on the day, but just by a few hairs of a second.
Yeah, I mean, before Baker goes to bed tonight, he's going to want that turn 1 last lap move back. He had his name in lights, committing to the outside because of Sabo's car positioning, ducking inside, and just coming unstuck on the power. It's Dove and Sabo at Parabolica last lap all over again. First turn versus last turn, but both prime overtaking opportunities are gone. And it's just kind of seems to be a notice to this field that if you're going to come after Sabo, you're going to come correct.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the final standings. Of course, Sabo in pole position there for the second race tonight. Baker getting a good little vengeance story there after what happened on Hockenheim. Brandon Dove as well getting the same sort of deal as Baker a little further back. Michael Healy and Matt Stevens, the other two drivers that were in the first place three-way tie earlier tonight. Rounding it out in 4th and 5th, Dylan Jordan as well. In fact, all three of them in a row there, but 1 point difference between them all. Timothy Vaughan, your double duck master, coming in at 8th there as we move them a little bit further down. Everything seems to look a little bit as we expect. Mandela Pluck actually pulling in pretty well over in P11 there, further up the table as usual. Enrico Grond had some really fun little battles a little earlier on as well. A lot of drivers to really contest with, and that was quite fun to watch. And then we moved down, and we would have also scrolled past Nathan Anderson, who unfortunately did get pitted there. I was really excited to see him battle a little longer, but at the same time, you know, we got at least one good one.
Yeah, I mean, like, we tipped it out at the top of the show that Zandvoort would be a tougher one to effect overtakes at. It's almost like defense wins championships and defense wins at Zandvoort. What a stunning display from Sabo, just being able to hold off a hard-charging Ewan Baker. That has got to be probably the exchange of the night, really. That was just thrilling stuff to end out the race. And yeah, like, it just, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a chat with them when we found out that they were planning that the whole race, because that almost looked like choreographed. Bide your time.
Yeah.
See if you can't have the situations fall your way in terms of tyre wear and opportunities, and then you make your move.
All right, well, you know, I've been talking about championship points all night long because they've been very interesting in the first 2 weeks. Now that we're at the end of week number 3, let's take a look at where everyone stands. It is Matt Stevens holding the top spot now with a great finish in Hockenheim and getting that 125 points. Dylan Jordan just behind him. Ewan Baker, a good finish there at the end of Zandvoort, but not enough to get into the top spot, 118 points. And then you go a little further down. Michael Healy has dropped down just a few points. That's how tight it has been. But Darren Lobb, you know, 2 very consistent finishes, has now put him in the top 6. Timothy Vaughan as well, just behind him. We're going to have a little bit of competition there around the top 6 to see who is going to be in the money. Antal Rafael Sabo has got to be someone to talk about, overtaking Brandon Dove, and looking at those 2 24-point stunners, 81 points.
Yeah, races 7 and 8 next week are going to be fascinating. Going up to the page, the race for the last spot in the money looked frighteningly tight. That is not all she wrote for the likes of Sabo and those quicker guys. It's going to be a heartbreaking type of day for Brandon Dove, but he's not like gone, I don't think. My maths not being the thing I'm known for. But, you know, it's a fascinating leaderboard from top to bottom.
Yeah, another one as well on the second half, just to touch up on that, was Hugo Allen. You know, he saw a lot of zeros, but also a lot of 23s, 24s. So, you know, we could have another case of a sine wave driver coming in here, you know, pulling off some surprise finishes. So, really great performance there. I think the star of the show, you know, it has to be Antal coming in. Sabo putting on an absolute stunner match. Good clean air drive, good battle in Zandvoort as well. So, great performance from him, pushing himself up. And Matt Stevens as well. We've got to talk about him getting to the top of the leaderboard. However, Evie, thank you so much for joining me this week here, stepping in for Monkey Matt, and you've been an absolute pleasure to have on the show. But guys, everyone at home, this is it for us tonight. It's week 3 all done and dusted. We've only got 1 more week to go to see who's going to be crowned the Samsung iRacing NZ Cup champion, and the only way to find out is to be here next week, and we're going to see you all then.